Hi folks, John Tobis here. Today I'm going to show you a feature that should be very useful for event supervisors at the state level who are needing to create multiple tests for multiple regions. In North Carolina, for example, we have 9 different weekends that we run tests on. And so in the past, we've had 7 weekends. I ended up creating 7 different tests that need to be equivalent, but we want to make sure that if a student volunteers in one region, they don't accidentally have an opportunity to see an answer to a question that might appear in their region. So for this reason, in past years, I've gone through the trouble of creating multiple tests for each region. When you consider that each test is 22, 24 questions times 7 regions, that's a lot of questions to be generated. And looking at this, we wanted to come up with a better way that would be a little bit less effort on the part of the event supervisor, but allows us to have some uniformity across all the regions so we can ensure that the teams are seeing the same types of questions. So to accomplish this, what we've done is we've created a test slicer. And what this basically does is we take 3, in this case, if I'm going for 9 regions, 9 different tests, I have 3 identical tests. We'll talk about how we make the tests be identical. Then what I do is I randomly select questions from each of those tests, randomly select one of 3 questions in order to generate the test. That way there, the ending test that you generate is substantially different from region to region. In fact, there's every possibility that none of the questions from one region are in another, appear on a test in another region. It's not likely it's that little of an overlap, but there's enough enough variability that there's no real advantage for someone who might volunteer in one region. If they happen to see the test, it's not going to give them any significant advantage when they take the test in their own region. So with that in mind, let's walk through the steps. It's effectively a 5-step process. What we're going to do is we're going to build the base test. We're going to complete that test together. We're going to balance the scores on the test. And we are going to create some time questions too along with that. Then what we'll do is I'll run our slicer and then finally adjust the scores on all the individual tests. So let's walk through this process. As you're well aware, we have our test builder. You can come into the test builder and say, all right, I'm going to build me a Division C Invitational Regional. We're going to call that Sample Regional C1, and we go ahead and generate the template. I'm not going to go through the process. There's other videos that show you how to do this, but the key thing in this is after you've gone through and created the test, you'll come down here and instead of saying save a test, you're going to say save a copy. Now you want to I've renamed this one. I'll click save a copy. I'll come back and rename it too. And then I will repopulate with new quotes for the second test, save a copy, repeat the process with the third, repopulating the quotes for the third one. So I end up with 3 tests which are substantially identical. Now, I've already done this, so let's just go walk in. I have my sample regional 1, 2, and 3. And if we go and edit this test, you can see I've gone through and for convenience, I've labeled all of the questions with an R1 on this test. If we go back and we look at the second one, I've named them all R2, and the third test I've named it R3. Now, what I want to have done is I want to have built 3 basically identical tests, but all having different quotes for their questions. So all of them start out with an aristocrat for the time question, different quotes for it, a complete columnar for question number 1, again, 3 different quotes for the 3 different tests, and going all the way down. So once I've done this with the test, I want to make sure that I adjust my scores. The reason why you want to adjust the scores is you have a nice balance on the test so that if 2 teams happen to get substantially same questions or similar type questions, that you won't end up getting a tie. And that's what there's another video that shows you about the adjust scores. But once I've done this, I've got my 3 tests in here, my regional 1, regional 2, and regional 3, all of which have the same number of questions, the same type of questions that I've built. Now, In this particular case, I'm going to just show you how to generate 5 different tests. And it's important that the tests all have unique time question. That's probably one of the biggest things that you don't want people to have an idea about. So I've gone ahead and created extra time questions. I've called time question number 4. And you can see I labeled that as a T4. And I've got in here time question number 5 labeled T5. I've just done that just to make it convenient for you to see the results. So now I've got all my tests in here. And now that I've got my tests, I've got the time questions, I've got my 3 identical tests, I'm going to run the test slicer. So we come in here to the test generation tools and you select the test slicer. And the first thing you tell it is, how many tests am I going to create? Well, in North Carolina, I created 9 tests. For this example, I'm just going to have 5 different tests. That's because I have 3 basic tests and I've got 2 time questions. So for my first test, I'm going to say, all right, I want my sample regional 1. Now my second test, let me just show you, I've got a test here. There's only got 3 questions, but you can see that those questions don't match. So it's going to give you some feedback that, oh no, you don't have, a copy of that test. So I go in here, select my regional 2. And I want you to look down here at the bottom. You can see my time question. I have 2 different question IDs, number 3 and 24. Don't worry about what those numbers are, but the fact that we have 2 different tells me that when I generate the test, it's going to pick from one of 2. Well, coming in for test 3, that's going to be my regional 3. And as I said, I want different time questions. So I want my time question number 4 and my time question number 5. So now if you look down here, you can see that for the time question, I have 5 different questions for the time question, 5 different unique ones. But you can see here for the question number 1, I have 3 different. You go down the list, you can see a lot of these, we have 3 different ones, but that's because I have 3 unique tests and I have 2 different sets of time questions. So now we've got this. And next step. So we picked the number of questions, we picked our input, and we're going to name this sliced test number. Okay. And now that we've done this, we're going to say generate the test. We look in here, we can see I have, and it's done all the work for us. Slice test number 1. So let's go look at slice test number 1. Slice test number 1 happens to use time question number 4. It's going to use, you'll notice that the first one is a nihilist, and then the second one is an aristocrat. Gee, that isn't what I started out with the input. Well, one of the nice things about the slicer is it will automatically randomize the questions on the test for you so that each test is in a completely different order. It gives you a lot, even though it's got the same set of questions from that would, same equivalent set of questions for each one of the slice tests, they're going to be in random order, so they're going to even look even more different. So in this particular case, you can see time question number 4. If we look at slice number 2, it's using time question number 5, and slice number 3 is using the question from test number 3, the time questions. You can see a lot of variability for them. As I said, the last thing that you need to do with each of these tests is you need to go back and adjust the scores one more time. The reason why you have to do this is, well, in this particular case, it came out pretty good, but sometimes it will happen to pick 2 questions which happen to be the same score, and you'll have need an adjustment to adjust the scores again here. But now that we've done this, as you can see, I have my original test, my sample regional 1, and I have my 5 slice tests. There's no particular requirement that you only do, the same number of input tests. If I said I wanted to generate 10 tests, then what it would have done, it would have reused the time question twice on each of the tests. The test slicer is very nice about that. It will only reuse a question enough times to make sure that every test gets a unique question. So if I had 3 input tests and 5 output tests, then you'll have 2 of the questions will be on 2 of the tests, and 1 question will only occur on 1 test. If I had 3 input tests and 6 output, then each one will appear twice. Now, hopefully, this will make it a lot easier for you if you're an event supervisor with a lot of regions. It means you don't have to generate as many tests. It also means you get an opportunity to spend a little bit more time making sure that the tests are, have a lot of good variety for the teams taking your test. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day.